Yes.
Yeah, I think I'm not the only one.
Thank you.
So let's take a few more seconds.
I do see a few familiar names, so I'm waving and waving. Hello.
Okay, so it seems it's good time to start today. Welcome to Transformational Tuesday. And who we have today in here to speak, it's Colleen. And few words about Colleen. So Colleen is an MCC Master Coach and the Global Managing Director of Inner Life Skills, an ICF accredited coach training business. She mentors a select group of coaches each year to become inspiring go-to in-demand coaches in their field. With 30 years of experience, she has taught over 35,000 people in 60 countries, written 3 published books, appeared as a frequent expert television, radio, and podcast guest, and delivered over 4,000 master coaching classes. When Colleen isn't working, you will find her driving her muddy 4x4 to wild Africa spaces and painting art commissions or meditating. And you can see the paintings behind Colleen right now.
Uh,
So Colleen, stage is yours.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And let me say a warm welcome to everyone. It is so wonderful to see the beautiful faces. I'm going to encourage you, if it's possible, to have your video on because it's always nice to feel like we're in the same room. I understand if your video needs to be off, but if it's possible, it's lovely to look around the room and feel a sense of connection. And just a hello to a couple of people that I actually know. I see you out there, and it's great to have you with us. And for all those of you that I've never met, heartfelt welcome. It is my pleasure to be with you. So, we have a very beautiful topic, and I think a very important topic. I'm going to also encourage you to make use of the chat because it's a lovely way to post comments, to just ask questions, otherwise, just to express whatever is highlighted for you or particularly relevant to you in this topic today. So let's fire away, and a very, very big thank you to Soham and to Jan for that very beautiful introduction and for the invitation to be with your beautiful selves today from around the world. So, we are going to be covering this wonderful topic, yes, and it might be nice to put in the chat what part of the world you're from. It's also nice to hear a little bit about everybody in the group. I would love to hear a little bit about what kind of coaching you do and where you're from in the world. So if you feel moved to share with us, grab that chat and you can definitely pop that there. So I can see already quite a few folks from different parts of the world. We're going to be looking today at critical coaching strategies for challenging times, and I'm sure you're all feeling this very, very, very much so. And we who are the space holders for teams, for individuals, I think you would all agree, I'm sure, that we have a critical role to play in the lives of the individuals, in the companies, and the teams that we guide, that we support. So I'm going to do my absolute best today to share some pearls of wisdom and to give you some of those strategies. But I also invite the talented experts in the group because I'm sure you're all bringing expertise, you're all bringing talent to the space, that if you feel inspired to share any tips of your own, that you do so in the chat as well. So we're looking at how to coach teams and individuals specifically in the context of people who are struggling in some way. They are experiencing some form of stress and suffering, and I'm going to be sharing how we might adapt the traditional styles of coaching that we have learned to really support people, and some of the do's and don'ts, or some of the less supportive things that we might want to avoid, and some of the more helpful strategies that we're seeing work in today's context. So that's what we're up to. And I see lots of wonderful comments on the group. Thank you so much. Some folks from France and Mauritius and India, etc. So wonderful to see the global community with us all today. And I have these two questions, and I'm going to ask the first one, and then you can type in a couple of keywords. And I also appreciate that English is not everybody's first language. So let's just throw spelling and grammar out the window for now so that everyone feels comfortable just to put down a few words. My first question is, what have you noticed has been the most challenging for you as a coach in the past year? So perhaps that is the challenge of sitting with people who are struggling. Perhaps it's the challenge of marketing yourself. Perhaps it's the challenge of switching to an online environment if you weren't already on an online platform. I'm very, very interested to know from you all. Some of you I know are in-house coaches and some are independent coaches. But what has been some of the most challenging aspects of being a coach for yourself in the last year? Let's have a look and see what comes out in the group. And when we share like this, it's also an opportunity to learn about what our colleagues are going through. So have your challenges been in the marketing space? Have they been in the actual skills space where you have to apply your skills in a challenging way? Finding clients, and there we have some. I'm going to just have a look at what's shared. Helena says, selling my services while facing the COVID-19 pandemic. And I'm sure a lot of folks have also felt some hesitancy to even put themselves out there and to market themselves, because sometimes it even feels disrespectful. Am I right? It feels like we want to honor people in their struggle. And so how do we balance trying to grow and market our businesses with respect for people's difficult situations? So I think that's quite an important topic. So I see there's a few themes coming out here. Just have a look at what everybody else is going through as well. Folks looking into establishing new businesses and struggling with marketing themselves. Yes, putting yourself out there, right? And I see some social media question marks as well there. And finding support for myself in amongst supporting others. When we are holding space for other people, who's holding space for us? Yes? So some key points I think already been raised. Thank you. Let's gather some of the intentions for today so that I can align the content in a more personal way. Mental rest, yes, and cleaning my energy after coaching all day. I think that's such an important topic, Venzo, because if you're holding spaces for everybody, I always say it's like feeling the songs of people all day. And at the end of the day, it's like a song that stays in your heart and in your mind that's difficult to shake. And so finding a way to actually let go of those songs with respect and find your own song again, find your own centered, peaceful, grounded space where you've let go of clients, I think is a super important part of how to look after ourselves as coaches. Challenges of switching to online, the technology of that, and perhaps also, Sophia, making that intimate, right? And making that same feeling of really connecting to our clients, but how do we do that in an online way? And of course, I hope you're getting a lot of tips from these forums, because I'm sure you're going to be learning. And it is possible to actually translate some of the skills I'm going to be talking about and strategies quite easily into the online space. And coaching people that felt everything was lost and could not see a glimpse of opportunity. Erica, exactly. Wherever somebody is at, I think everyone to some extent has tasted either the collective stress or have been through their own very deeply personal suffering. And we as coaches need to, I feel, adapt to that kind of space. And I'm going to be talking about those key adaptations in a moment, as soon as we get a sense of where everybody's at. Maintaining coaching relationships online and clients feeling overwhelmed and mentally exhausted. Exactly. And Apollo, I think that's perfectly put. It's hard to let go, right? It's hard to forget. It's hard to shake off those tough conversations, especially when they trigger things that we're also feeling. And here we're meant to hold coach position and stay neutral, but it can be tough to stay neutral when our own emotional feelings get woken up by a client's story, for example. And of course, Robert's saying marketing is a challenge. I'm also still very new to coaching and find it challenging to rein in my EQ and not stray into therapy. Yes, it's, I think there's more and more of a space, Robert, for a blended approach without going so far into the therapeutic space that we lose our coaching roots. But of course, there always are overlaps, and perhaps you might benefit today from seeing where we can do that, where we can still remain coaches and we can still honor the coaching profession, but hold the kind of spaces that are necessary in today's times because of these challenges that we're talking about. All right, so while a couple of points still come through, my next question is what's been the most challenging for your clients and coachees? And some of those have already been mentioned, but just see if there's one or two other some things you want to add to the conversation. What have you noticed that our clients are really experiencing? And that can be organizational challenges, as well as individual clients, depending on where you found yourself as a coach. So for those of you with client experience, if you want to put down some of the challenges that you've noticed that your clients are bringing to the table. Manish is saying guarding against transference while coaching has been challenging in this time. Exactly. I think that's a very valid point. I found that clients rarely want to make coaching their full-time career but don't know how. Yes, it can seem like this giant gap between certification and skills and an actual career, that bridging. So we'll see how much we can handle today. I've got lots of content packed in, ready to share with you. I'm going to do my best to give you all as much value as I can. And of course, here are some of the key issues that are showing up: social anxiety, clients feeling challenged, yes, at work, yes, 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 yes. Overcoming conditioned beliefs, a lot of those limiting and conditioned beliefs really bumping up against the struggles of today's world. And then managing family, Bruno, yes, as well as the job, and clients feeling isolated and this adjustment. Yes, Madhav, I've seen that more senior folks seem to be adapting to the online environment more easily, but a lot of the onboarded staff, a lot of new staff, and certainly more, it seems to be more the younger generations really struggling when they've been recently employed or only new to their employment environments and now suddenly are working remotely. I think they tend to struggle the most in general. Financial issues, of course, and employees not seeing the point in continuing to work hard, etc. That whole demotivation space. So we've got a snapshot. Thank you very much, everybody. I really appreciate this. Managing teams and team skills for leaders. Leaders have always been burdened with a lot of responsibility. And in today's world, it's even more so. Isn't that true? Yes. All right. So I'm sure you're going to agree with some of these. I'm not going to go into everything in great detail. We're just going to touch in on some of the points. What we're seeing, my team of licensed trainers and my top coaches that I stay in touch with, what we're seeing that our clients are saying, and you can see a lot of the themes are echoed, that there's a struggle to stay positive, focused, and productive, which I think many of you are echoing. There's also, I'm sure some of you have seen this, high numbers of talent loss. And in fact, to the point that it's even got a little bit of a label now. There's a lot of media being, a lot of press around this at the moment, what's been called the Great Resignation. And in fact, even the Great Retirement. And Forbes and BBC and many of the bigger platforms are actually commenting and exploring what seems to be quite a lot of talent drain from big companies and organizations. And this seems to be another two things. And as coaches, by the way, these two key words are probably something you want to make a note of in terms of the need out there and the demand, because two big themes that are coming up are the need for resilience and agility. Yes, the coaching in the space of helping people to be resilient and helping people to be agile, as in to change and adapt. So those two themes have come up quite strongly. And something that has definitely shown up in the chat is people feeling disconnected, especially young and newly onboarded. They feel unsupported, whereas senior staff are often feeling that this has been a blessing. They're taking almost an early retirement, working from home, but they're already very comfortable. They're already established in their skills. They're established in their networking. So they're not feeling it as harshly as folks that are very social or folks that are new to their careers. And there's just a little reference at the bottom if you wanted to look up any of this data. The Labor Department in the US says 43 million Americans left their job in August 2021. And it's one of the highest levels of really talent drains. And so, of course, there's a space for coaching in the talent retention space as well. So talent retention, resilience, and agility coaching are all something to keep in mind. What we're also seeing from our coaches on the ground is also echoed by what you're talking about in the chat. Those who adapted easily to online and to the new demands have done actually incredibly well. So surprisingly, we are seeing coaches with record income and record impact that are actually so busy that they're struggling to cope. But on the other extreme, we've also seen a lot of coaches who have struggled to adapt, who are suffering and have even lost their coaching dreams and have gone back to employment or have given up on their careers as coaches, as managers, in-house coaches, etc. So what is the key here? I want to share with you two key adaptations that I think will be the most helpful and valuable use of our time. The first is in inviting us all to adapt some of our coaching style to accommodate clients who are stressed or are struggling and are suffering in some way. And also, and we're going to squeeze this in as well because I think there's a demand for it in the group and it will be helpful. I want to talk about some of the key adaptations I've seen that coaches have made to their offers, to what they're putting out into the world in terms of marketing, in terms of product creation, that has really kept them doing really well. Of the two, so we're just going to number them 1 and 2, okay? 1 is how to adapt your coaching style to meet these needs of your clients, and number 2 is how to adapt your coaching offer. And even if you're an internal coach, you still have to market coaching in order to get buy-in, right? And market this approach as an internal buy-in. 1 and 2, which are you the most interested in? And of course, you can say both if both are interesting for you. So put a little number in the chat. Number 1, I'm the most interested in how to adapt my coaching style. Number 2 is the offers, and that's going to be curious to see where we're weighted today. I see a lot of demand for number 2, but quite a few interested in both. Okay, that is super helpful. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Bruno. Thanks, Abir. James, very good. Hey, Lynn. See some familiar names. Alrighty. You've heard about me, so I'm not going to go on about me. Just something I did want to mention is one of the reasons I'm so passionate about coaching in the context of stress and suffering is because that's the place we can make the most meaningful contribution to someone's life. And in my early years as a coach, I was a little bit frustrated with the fact that I think mainstream coaching can somehow limit our ability to coach at depth. But I was pleasantly surprised to discover master MCC coaching and the competencies that the ICF lay out, because this invites a kind of style of coaching that has such depth to it that it can really work in a space where our clients are stressed and suffering. It's not a coincidence that I really stepped into my role as a coach and as a facilitator and a mentor through some of the darkest years of my own life. And very briefly, about 24 years ago, my second daughter was born with very serious health problems. She had her first surgery at 14 hours old and more than a dozen surgeries before she was 2 years of age. And at the same time, my husband's small graphic design business crashed and burned, and we were in financial disaster level. We had lost almost everything, and we were literally living in survival, almost post-traumatic stress-inducing lives where we were rushing my daughter to hospital every 2 to 3 weeks. Now, I will tell you that what got me through that time and what I'm the most grateful for are some of the skills I'm going to be sharing with you today. Because of course, I'm sure you're well aware that as coaches, we should be coaching ourselves as well and giving ourselves the gift of self-coaching. And so learning how to get deeper than the surface where we are struggling and where our minds are torturing us and where our emotions are really intense, to find the wealth of wisdom in our inner wells is something that got me through some of the darkest times of my life. And therefore, of course, I feel very grateful always to help others to facilitate that type of coaching. So that's just to give you a little context. This is just a little collage, some of the beautiful people that I've been fortunate to work with around the world. And now today, my privilege to work with you all. So let's have a look at some of these coaching style adaptations, and then we're going to look at the coaching offer adaptations. So let's dive in to this content. I'm quite sure that many of you will be familiar with some of this, so I'm going to just touch on it lightly so that you've got the bullet points, you've got the knowledge, or that you've refreshed your knowledge. The reason we need to adapt our coaching style is the following. I'm sure you were taught And very rightly so, that as coaches, we are meant to focus on the solution, true? And as coaches, we're meant to hold a beautiful space, but still guide through our questions somebody away from the problem, away from the past. Otherwise, we go into the space of therapy, yes? And so we've been taught to reframe. Who here has been taught to reframe? You can do hands up or just put a yes in the chat. To reframe from negative to positive, right? To reframe from focusing on the past to focusing on the future. This is classic coaching, fundamental skills, which I'm sure we're getting a few yeses there. But I'm sure you're going to agree that if somebody is struggling, if somebody is stressed, am I not right that it feels unnatural to force a reframe? True? To try and push someone. Yes, Doomy is like, absolutely. Yes, it feels, it even feels rude. It just feels unnatural. And there's a reason for that. So your experience of this and your intuition of this is actually spot on. You may know this already, but the part of the brain that kicks in, the part of our hardware, where all the apps are that help us to think logically, to reason, and here's a critical one that you might not be aware of, to consciously change habits. So if we want to change an unconscious habit, we need to activate our frontal lobe neocortex. Now, obviously, we don't need to know that. You don't exactly say, all right, I'm pushing play on that app, right? But that's the neuroscience of what's going on. We also need to be in what's called the parasympathetic nervous system dominant state. And that's a long, complicated way of saying we need to be in a relaxed, open, receptive state, which is conducive for rest, for intuition, for creative thinking, for inspiration. Now, we are going to struggle to help somebody, to coach someone, to get them to find insights, to make change, if they're not in those two dynamics, if those two dynamics are not running. But we can't force this, right? And we can't snap our fingers and make this happen. So I think the first point I'd like you all to take away is to realize that it's a biological, physical thing that's going to be in the way of you being able to easily coach someone who is not in a relaxed state, who has got stress of some kind in their bodies. Because the other two parts of the brain, you might know there's three main centers of the brain. The frontal lobe, which is the youngest part of the brain, and then there's the older parts of the brain, the mammalian brain and the reptilian brain. And these are responsible for emotional familiarity and self-preservation, literally kill or be killed instincts. Now, when someone is very stressed, depending on the degree of stress, I can tell you these are the apps that are running. This is what's in charge of their thinking, of their response. They are in a sympathetic nervous system dominance, likely, which is fight or flight, and they're having this very primitive part of the brain almost be in charge. True? So if you are relying on traditional coaching skills and traditional coaching questions, and you go with all your beautiful knowledge and all your tools, and you don't know this, you're going to try and jump straight into a logical reasoning conversation where there's inspiration and intuition, and what you're going to have is your client shut down, yes? And they're going to say, okay, let me just say, is this not the worst thing a coach hears? When you ask your client a question and they answer, I don't know. Yes? There you are with your beautiful, perfect question. And you put it in the space, and your client says, I don't know. And there's different kinds of I don't knows. Yes? There's the I really don't know. That's why I'm with you. And they stare at you wondering, why aren't you helping me? Yeah. Or it's the resigned, heavy, burdened I don't know. Like head on hand, I don't know. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. Now, when you see that kind of dynamic, I want you to know you're not doing anything wrong per se. It's just, as my father, who was quite a carpenter, he used to say, the wrong tool for the job, right? We're trying to apply our traditional coaching style. So we need to adapt, folks. We need to adapt. So I'm going to give you a couple of important tips here that I think you can take away from today immediately. When your client is calm and creative, you can do all the things you know. You can reframe negative to positive, which of course means that you help them focus on what they do want instead of what they don't want. Yeah, so if a client says, I'm tired of being stressed, the traditional coaching reframe is something like, if you weren't stressed, what would you prefer to feel? Then they tell you, I want to feel in control, or I want to feel empowered. And then you as a coach focus on the thing they do want. Pretty much like when we go to a restaurant, you don't tell the waiter what you don't want. You don't say, well, I don't want veggies, or I don't want salad, because your waiter doesn't know what to write down. You say what you do want. And as coaches, we always, we, we know that we need to gently move people to find what they do want. Now, you can do that quite easily when your client is in a calm, creative, receptive space, when that parasympathetic nervous system is running the show, and when their frontal lobe is is active, when the gray matter is on board. But of course, when somebody is stressed or suffering, that becomes not only frustrating and difficult, it can actually break rapport. It can actually cause your client to think you're not listening. True? So we want to know what's going on here. The other two reframes that are classic is reframing from focusing on the past, taking someone gently away from the story, yes, towards the future and the present. And that is still coaching. But when somebody is stressed and suffering, we all know that you can't go there yet easily without a little bit of room for that story about what happened. And we know this is the real reality. I will say, when you're getting ICF credentialing, when you are passing your assessments, you must show probably this kind of coaching with a little touch of the kind of coaching we're going to be talking about, because you need to demonstrate coaching competencies, absolutely. But the truth is, on the ground, where the coaching is happening, I think coaches who aren't equipped to make this transition really struggle. So that's why we're putting some reality into the mix. Agreed? All right. So instead of quickly trying to reframe to solutions, future, and positive, here's what you can do instead. I'm going to give you a couple of little methods, some very natural ways to switch from the parasympathetic to the sympathetic nervous system. Now, before you think, oh, Cole, that sounds super obvious. It's amazing how sometimes we forget the super obvious, right? So do not underestimate the following. So I've got two ideas here for you. The first is simple. It has been proven that 2 minutes not deep breathing, right? Funny enough, because if someone is very stressed, deep breathing can actually make them feel a bit dizzy, can make them feel a little bit like too much oxygen, and it can actually make them feel unwell. But slow breaths have been the key. So, 2 breaths of slowing down the breath can be a proven way to switch from sympathetic nervous dominance, which is the stressed nervous system, to the parasympathetic nervous system. And when that switch happens, our hands warm up. When we're stressed, our hands get cold and sometimes clammy. When the parasympathetic nervous system's back in charge, our hands warm up. We get more saliva in our mouths. Anybody who's ever felt nervous to give a talk? Yes? Isn't it true? It felt like you ate a whole lot of biscuits and your mouth went dry. That, that tells you the sympathetic nervous system was dominant. Now, 2 minutes of just breathing to the counts of 6 to 8, somewhere in that space, can be massively helpful to just literally switch nervous systems. So when people say, oh, just take a breath, take a deep breath, they are onto something. And paramedics are taught to do this in appropriate environments. Trauma counselors are taught to do this. Coaches and therapists and leaders trained in working with people in post-traumatic stress are also taught this. So it's a simple thing that you can just remind yourself about 1 to 2 minutes of slower breathing. Now, if you're thinking, but Cole, I can't do something weird like that in a working environment, I'm going to tell the CEO, let's just take a few minutes to breathe. Now, if you're very connected to your clients and they've known you for years, you can probably get away with it. But if it's a new relationship, or if the person is not comfortable with this kind of thing, I'll tell you that if you are breathing slowly, give it a few minutes and you will see that the person that you're coaching, they meet you there and you don't even have to tell them to do it. So if you are in a relaxed state, if you have done your conscious, mindful, slower breaths, just getting more present, you will see that almost invites your client onto the bridge with you. So you may not necessarily need to tell someone to breathe slowly. You can, but you can also be doing it yourself. Just exactly do me a mirroring exactly. Now, there's a big trend at the moment in the coaching world that I'm super excited about because I've loved this kind of work for a long time, and that's called somatic coaching or somatic awareness. The word soma or somatic means body, right? Body. And the reason I love it is because I've always been someone who's enjoyed including intuition in coaching and have found the benefits of somatic work myself. But it also turns out that even a little bit of putting attention in the body sensations, in the center of the body, noticing body sensations, noticing heat and cold, noticing whether the body feels contracted or open, stressed or relaxed, giving language to the physical and physiological sensations of the body is a very simple but profound way to help a client to switch into a more resourceful present state. It also turns out to be a wonderful tool to include in your coaching to make deep transformation happen. So make perhaps a little bit of a note to start finding a way to experiment with checking in with the physical sensations, with an overall feeling of contraction or openness, which is my two favorite go-to somatic check-ins. And I call this work ABCs, putting your attention in the body, in the center, and staying there. How's that sounding, folks? Hopefully something helpful there. Then something to be mindful of when somebody is in the stressed state, we have to get past some gatekeepers, which I'm showing my age now, but when I was younger, we used to go to clubs and dance until 3, 4 in the morning. And there was always a bouncer. Like, this is when I was 16, right? And there was always a bouncer. There was some big, strong, tough looking person at the door. When you want to coach somebody who's in a stressed state, I want you to imagine that they've got some gatekeepers, they've got some bouncers. So your usual tactics of rapport building, etc., you need to increase those now. Yes, you're saying, what are some examples of moving client to somatic awareness? Okay, it's good. Let me just give you a good question. You could say, you could say something like this. You could say, I know it sounds a little bit crazy, just in case it does. So you're putting it out there. I know this sounds a bit strange or a little bit crazy, but it can be really helpful to check in with the way your body is feeling right now, especially the chest area, your stomach area. And you might even give your client an example. Like, for example, when we're stressed, we tend to feel fluttering like butterflies, or tightness in our abdomen, or when we are feeling certain emotions, we tend to feel tightening in the throat. And you can just say, it's been proven that it can be helpful to include some of that in coaching. Are you available for that, or would you like to include that? So remember, you can invite your clients in to this. You're not imposing it. Always, as coaches, we're partnering, we're inviting. And if somebody says yes, okay, then you say, so I'm curious, when you're thinking about the topic of our coaching today, or when you're thinking about this deadline, or this, whatever the theme is, how does your chest area and your abdomen and your overall experience feel? And if you need a little bit of a helpful cue, you could say, if 10 out of 10 was very open and relaxed and 0 was very contracted, I'm curious, where are you feeling right now? And that scaling also helps people to respond. And just them putting their attention is going to help. Does that answer your question? Yes, sir. I hope so. All right, so to get past the gatekeepers, here are a couple of tips. Our tone of voice has a way of soothing the mammalian part of the brain, which is the limbic system. So amazingly, when we are stressed, have you noticed when we're stressed, our voices tend to go a little bit one-dimensional? If you've ever, okay, I'm going to tease us ladies now, right? But if you've ever been with a stressed woman, and I'm joking, please, okay, but our voices tend to go a little higher pitched, yes? Well, men, it's the same, yes? So we all know this, but that's because the stressed nervous system is coming online. So that when we as coaches if we speak like this and we have a higher pitched or a tighter feeling around our tone, that's going to amplify the stress of our client. So melodic doesn't mean you have to sound like a melody, but you might want to experiment with some kind of tonal change. You see how I'm doing that now? It's actually quite beautiful to experiment. Now, we need to be quite relaxed to do that. We also want to talk slower. The more sensitive the topic, the more stressed our client, I promise you, the more we need to slow down. And I saw one of your previous guests on these Transformational Tuesdays talked a lot about silence. I'm not even going to go in there because I think he covered it really well, and perhaps go look at some of the resources of a previous guest. But silence, slowing down, space, and of course, body language. And here's something you may not have heard: not too much eye contact. Yes, eye contact's important, but it can feel threatening and it can feel intense, especially if you ask a question, right? You ask a question, then you want to look away and give someone space. Don't look away like now you're more interested in your phone, obviously. This is just perhaps going to your notes, right? To add, and because you've already got permission, hopefully, to take notes. Exactly. Lovely. Noticing posture, etc. Some good clues there from Doomy. Don't rush to reframe. Create space and silence. Use your listening skills. Get equal to. Now, this is one of my other favorite teachings. We all know about coach position or coach presence, which is staying neutral. But instead of trying to be plus, which is either feeling sorry for someone or dominating, like trying to force a solution, pushing too hard, and also not feeling intimidated by somebody's intense story and feeling smaller than, so not bigger than, not smaller than. Just remember these words: be equal to. Be equal to their suffering. Be willing to sit in the space with somebody who's stressed or somebody who's suffering. Don't try to rush to fix it. Don't try to rush to reframe. Use your breathing, use somatic awareness, slow down, use silence and space. And if these simple things are done well, and just listen, really, the gift of unconditional listening. When last did somebody listen to you that way? It is the most profound thing you can give. And it does belong even in business environments. It can be done in a very professional way. It doesn't have to feel like fluffy or anything. It can feel just respectful. It can feel like natural leadership as well. Silence is often a sign of natural leadership. Yes? So, which of these little tips and techniques is the one that you are going to grab from what you've heard today? Let me know in the chat. Is it not rushing to reframe? I love that phrase, silent presence, Yasser. I think that I would agree. Is it being equal to your clients, equal to their struggle? Is it some of the breathing techniques? What are you going to just make a little note of for yourself? All right, so there we go. Just while you're writing those down, I want to echo some of the ICF's descriptions of critical competencies that are actually encouraging us to do this and that you can tap into as a coach right now. One of the ICF descriptions that I love the most, which I think you can consciously do, right? We can consciously remind ourselves, is being comfortable in the unknown. So think of yourself as paddling down a river with your clients in a little boat. You've got to be willing to be courageous about not knowing where the river will turn in your sessions. I know especially new coaches are very nervous. They want to know what to ask next, what to do next. Invite yourself to realize that coaching at its highest, at an MCC level, is really being comfortable in the unknown, not knowing what the client's going to say next, not knowing what you're going to say next, staying with everything I've just told you instead, right? This is another ICF competency, being willing to have the client be vulnerable. So that's what I said about being equal. Let your client be vulnerable if they are. And here's another ICF statement. There's no evidence of fixing a problem or the client. This is MCC level coaching. You're not bringing in your hammer to try panel beat your client into a perfect client. Instead, you have a sense of complete ease and naturalness in the conversation. You're not having to work your client or perform. You're not tap dancing for your clients. MCC coaching is actually a lot easier when you get this, when you realize, wow, to coach at master levels, I can let go a bit. I can actually just be with someone. So take some of those tips. All right. Now, as we promised, some very good ideas coming through there. Thank you, everyone. Here are a couple of my most important tips for you in terms of the adaptation we need to make as coaches that are helpful to market ourselves and put ourselves out there. I'm going to first admit that I was wrong about something. I got some egg on my face. 25 years ago, when I trained coaches, I stood on my soapbox and I told everyone, you must niche, right? You know what a niche is? It's a very narrow market. It's a niche market. And so I told coaches, you need to pick a specialty, you need to back that specialty, you need to get out there with a specialty. It was true 25 years ago, and I'm not going to say it's not true now, but I'm going to give you a caveat. I'm going to give you why, where, and how. Okay, so I'll redeem anyone who's told you that niching is important, but I'm going to tell you under what circumstance. At the beginning of this year, I interviewed my top coaches, and I'm going to just show you some of their faces quickly. We're going to skip. This is one of our coaches that I've known and I love dearly since the 90s. He is one of our most successful coaches. He had record years. He had record months this year. And so I wanted to show you these kinds of examples to inspire you to what's possible, but also to tell you what I learned about what I was wrong about all those years ago. Fortunately, I did realize this a few years ago, but I'm a bit of a slow learner sometimes. Every single successful coach that we've stayed in touch with that have been successful in the last year and a half during such extraordinary times, none of them niche. That should be a bumper sticker. Okay. None of them niche. And if you're confused now and like, but Cole, I don't understand. How do we do this? This is one example. This is another example. Muriel Marie, who's in Belgium. None of them niche, but this is another lady, Oksana. So let me just go back to what I'm going to say. I want you to imagine drawing a line, right, but on a piece of paper. And if you want to just visualize this so I can get this point across super quick and super clear. On the left-hand side of your paper, I want you to imagine that on the left-hand side of your paper is conversations with potential clients on the left-hand side. And when I say a conversation, I mean a real conversation, a casual, human, beautiful conversation. On the right-hand side of your page, I want you to imagine that what we write there is online marketing. Okay, your online presence, your online marketing. Okay, so left-hand side, client conversations. Right-hand side, online marketing. What I learned from interviewing our top coaches, not a single one of them was offering a single service. Only one of them had a website that didn't even really do much for them. I think two of them had LinkedIn profiles, one of which the LinkedIn profile had done well for him. The rest are very successful without any online marketing. So a couple of key points here. Okay. They are successful because when having a client conversation, they've got a comprehensive toolbox and what I call the big four coaching services or niches. You can have more, but these are the big four. So Jan mentioned earlier, I'm from Africa. So if you've heard, the big five are elephant, rhino, buffalo, etc. They are animals. In the coaching space, the big four are life coaching, business coaching, executive coaching, and one that's become super powerful and very popular at the moment is Enneagram coaching, Enneagram personality typing. And if you invite me back another time, I can give you a whole masterclass on that if you'd like. So the big four, right? The big four. The successful coaches right now, on the left-hand page, the conversations are custom building client solutions, blending different niches, different specialties, and they have not boxed themselves in. What this means is it's much simpler. You need, especially in the beginning stages of building a coaching career, in the beginning stages, which I think is sometimes 3 years, you need to be having as many conversations as you can with potential clients. You need to spend 80% of your time on the left-hand side of the page, which means that you show up as a human being, not an infomercial, because none of us like that. None of us want to be infomercials, okay? Especially right now when people are suffering. You don't want to be buy one, get one free, right? Am I right? Okay. We want to be beautiful, authentic human beings, and we want to serve people. And how you serve at the highest is you have a conversation where you're listening for and excavating where's the stress, where's the struggle, where's the suffering. Okay, those 3 words: stress, suffering, and struggle. And you're looking at your toolbox, and hopefully you've got a beautiful, big, comprehensive toolbox with at least some of the big 4 skill sets running in there. And hopefully it's flexible, because what you want to do is custom build on the fly. So what that looks like is, and it's, by the way, this works in the corporate space beautifully. In fact, I'll give you an example. In 2012, so way back, I was asked to go have a meeting with a potential multinational client. I was pitching against very big hitters. I felt like the little David Goliath, or the little small fishy in the big pond, because even though I have a beautiful business, I was competing against some really big hitters. I arrived at the first meeting. I didn't have a business card. I didn't have a PowerPoint presentation. I didn't have a brochure in sight. No off the shelf, like, here's my product, I hope you like it. The first meeting I coached, I spoke to, the man's name was Samuel Chakela, and I asked him a million questions. And while I was asking questions, I was custom building a program for him in my mind, so that at the second meeting, I could bring him exactly what he needed. Yes? Now, wherever there is space to do that, my fellow colleagues and coaches, that's the way you win individual coaching deals. That's the way you win multinationals. We eventually won that contract. We still work for the client. We were shortlisted in 2014 for an ICF Prism Award, top 5, for the work we did for that client. And we didn't stop there with the customizing. On the ground, coaching, working with those leaders in a talent development space, we continue to custom build. We continue to refine and change the offer. Now, when you've done this enough times, when you get enough yeses, like something works, yes, 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 that's what you put online. And that's what you show as your niche to the world, because it's your shop window. And like any store, you put in the shop window your best thing, but when somebody goes into the shop, you show them the rest. True? So I hope that is, I see time is doing what it does best, and I assume I have to stop talking at some point. But if you can take some of those little gems, and yeah, you know, customize your coaching solutions, have human conversations where you're looking, how can I be of service? Build your toolboxes, go for the big four if you can, and remember all the tips that I've said about coaching people in stress and suffering. So how are we doing out there? Are you all there? I see some nodding, I see some smiling, I see some thumbs up. I am available for questions, comments, complaints to management. How are we doing out there? We've got just a few minutes left, yes? I think we're actually there on time, yes. Pleasure. Some great insights. So what are you going to do for yourself to handle the challenge of growing your coaching business? I hope you're going to go and have as many human conversations as you can. Remember to be flexible. Remember to not climb in a box of a niche until you're ready, or at least just put it as a shop window. Erica, you want to unmute?
Hello, thank you so much for the presentation. It was great. I have noted a lot of things down. And I
Pleasure.
want to ask you, how do you custom build the program if it's the client journey? Because we've been told it's the client's journey, it's the client that decides the topic and all of that. So how do we come up with something and still make it the client's journey?
Very good question. And I might want to mention that I'm a little bit of a maverick. I want to honor pure coaching. So what I call pure coaching is exactly what you're saying, where you don't choose the topic, where you let your client lead almost entirely. And then there is blended coaching. So blended coaching is when it's contextual coaching. For example, if you get hired to coach a team who is struggling with their morale, for example, or with their team cohesion, there's a context to that coaching. There is actually a agenda. There's actually somebody saying you can't just let the client completely choose. It has to belong to a theme, yes? There's even a further step where you could loosely theme segments of your coaching with flexibility. Now, that's more of a blended approach, and a lot of pleasure. It's a lot of managers need to have a blended approach because they do need to manage still. They do need to lead. And in the real world, I'm going to just say, in the real world, I would guess most coaches end up having to do blended coaching. Yes? They end up having to adapt into it. Now, with that being said, I still think you earn the right to offer blended coaching by first proving you can do pure coaching. So, because if you can empower someone without giving any advice, without in that pure space, it's going to make you a much better blended coach, let's say. And then you will need to be adaptable. It's a kind of thing like if, let's say, if a parent hires you to coach their teenager, because the teenager is struggling with confidence, suddenly you have a theme for your coaching. It's called confidence coaching. You can't completely indulge the teenager in I want to be coached on improving my gaming score on my PlayStation. You know what I mean? You need to adapt the coaching. You need to still be influencing the coaching, you see? So that's the first point. And then a lot of our coaches end up in the blended space, creating little bubbles, like little incubation spaces that are themed. So let's say you could sell a 10-month program and it was a talent development program, and you have themes for each section or each stage. Now you're still going to use all your beautiful pure coaching skills. You're still going to contract a session, but you're going to contract the session in the context of the theme. And what that sounds like is something like this. So, towards your team working better together, what do you want from the session today? You hear that? So, towards your teenage, you feeling more confident, what can we focus on today? So, it's a little bit of a mixed approach. Erica, does that sort you out? Does it give
Yes,
you?
thank you so much.
It's such a pleasure, and I hope that inspires you with more possibilities. Yes. Alrighty, folks. I didn't see if there were any other hands up. I thought there was another hand up, but I know we've run way past. Lots of wonderful comments. Thank you for all the comments. Helena, I hope I'm saying that right. Helena, you're welcome to unmute.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Can.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for your presentation. It was very inspiring and very, very useful. I totally agree with your approach, the fact that you need to build the coaching to your client and to go with the flow, basically. But you mentioned a few times a toolbox, so I'm quite curious to hear more about that. What's in it, basically? Thank you.
The toolbox. I like to think of a toolbox as if we were musicians, we would need a repertoire of songs that we could sing. If we were master chefs, we would need lots of recipes, yes? And in the beginning of learning as a coach, I think recipes are really helpful because they accelerate our learning. So what that means is processes, little structured but flexible processes, that somebody has a process that's really good at handling inner obstacles like procrastination. And then they've got another tool that really helps with decision making. Then they have another tool. So to build up toolboxes, I find to be almost critical. And then also to respect the fact that, like a recipe or a song, as you grow and develop as a coach, you want to throw them away. So you want to start jamming. You want to start creating your own recipes. You want to start. So you need the recipes and you need the songs, but then you need to eventually find your own groove. But you're going to use everything that you've learned to accelerate that process and to help you be a better coach. Pleasure. Pleasure. Do me.
I'll keep it short, Cole. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant session. Thank you so much. So much to take away. We should do this 2 hours, guys. You know, brilliant.
Sorry, that's
Yeah.
me. I
Yeah.
normally teach for 3 hours, so.
Yeah, and if you let me ask a quick question, Cole, around the margins or let's call it the boundaries. I think of it in concentric circles, that space between coaching and therapy and psychology and even counseling. In this stressful space, it looks like those boundaries are grayed out a little bit, and you find a lot of that overlapping a little bit. And it's very important what you said in session, very, very powerful around managing ourselves. And with the right toolbox, I love the metaphor, always use it. Carry a large toolbox, many tools, whip out the right tool for the right situation, hence context. So any reflections, quick ones on the boundaries among the modalities?
No, Idumi, thank you. Even a good friend knows how to listen. So as long as we're not crossing, let's say, ethical or scope boundaries or legal boundaries, like we're not diagnosing illness, we're not saying, we're not prescribing treatments or medicine if we're not licensed to do so, even a really good friend knows how to listen well. So I think as long as we're listening well and creating space for people, that's the common ground I find between a brilliant therapist and a brilliant coach and a brilliant leader and a brilliant friend. So I think you can feel comfortable that you're not going to go into territory you shouldn't be in just to spend a little more time holding a space for someone who is struggling. Thanks, Dumi. It's such a pleasure, all the beautiful coaches. And yeah, you're welcome to look me up on Instagram, say hi. I've only got a few followers on Instagram. I'm not very prolific on Instagram yet, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. Say hi, love to connect with everybody. And I just want to appreciate and thank the hosts and their gracious, introduction, and thank you for the opportunity to be with your community. I see some of my communities here too. So what a wonderful co-creation we've put together.
So Colleen, thank you a lot for being here today. And thank you all coaches for being here today. I think we all take away a lot of insights and awareness today. So that's cool. And today we end this session, but don't worry, next time we will back. And next time the speaker will be Clara Angelina Diaz Anderson. And it will be about leader as a coach, coach as a leader, how successfully employ coaching to grow as an influential leader. So looking forward to next time. Enjoy and have a nice rest of the day. Bye all.
Thanks, Jan.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Colleen.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see there was a question from Amit. Should I quickly try and
Yes,
okay, let's do it.
please.
so we allow people
Thank
to
you.
I'm
allow
Thank you,
people-
Colleen.
Sorry,
so
no,
much.
I only saw it now, Amit. Yeah, so since we are running out of time, would it be possible to cover one of the most complicated situations with one of your executive coachee and the way you overcome and feel like share with us? Okay, I'll tell you what I was coaching 3 shareholders that were very stressed and in conflict, and what I used is everything I'm telling you, and I did not push for a typical quick solution like, well, how can you resolve the issue? Those typical, and I don't mean to be facetious, but those very typical entry-level coaching questions, which would actually have frustrated them and they would have been insulted because it's a 4-year problem, and if they'd had a solution, they would have solved it by now. So it was really about first creating a bit of space, guiding the space, not letting it spiral down into a bun fight or into something too negative, but giving it a context. So what came up was the one man felt like he didn't belong in the group of the 3 of them. And it's very gently acknowledging that, not unpacking that with why and how does that make you feel or anything like that, but certainly just giving it some space. And then, I'm sorry, back to the tools. I have a lot of tools that I know how to use in those spaces. And one of them is systemic coaching, where we've got a whole process on belonging. So I just adapted that process to the moment, and we started having a conversation around belonging and using some of these tools like acknowledging that and connecting it to what we call placement and burdens, handing back burdens, and really supporting the 3 of them in a blend of finding their own best solutions, but also using the framework of the tools that I brought to the table. And that became helpful. So I'm trying to answer it as quickly as I can. I hope that has give you a little clue. Yes?
Thank you so much. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Pleasure, Amit. All right, everybody. Are we good? Thank you. Pleasure, Amit. Jan? It's a pleasure, Sophia. And nice to see Shams and Sophia and Lynn and a couple of folks that I know. Thank you. Thanks for joining us today. Jan?
So thank you all again for being here, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, bye.
God bless you all.
Thank you so much.